All right, folks, it's time for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Mecky. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another Shiny Side Out with
Dave
and Mecky. We are part of Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com, which is a volunteer station, so please feel free to donate as much as you like. You can join our show by joining us in the chat. You can follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. To get updates between the shows, check out our website, and we have updated the show notes recently. It's pretty cool. Dave, how are you, mate?
Oh, g'day, mate. I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, go on, aye.
See, that's a bit too rough. I'm doing really good. We had a great week, and how about yourself?
Yeah, no, good. I didn't chop anything off this week. So
That's lucky.
My finger is healing nicely. Tomorrow I'm going to see the plastic surgeon. That's going to be fun. And to see if there was any nail bite damage, if my nail is going to grow back and all these wonderful things. Other than that, good week for me too, buddy. Pretty good week.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, now last week we didn't get to finish off the Moon show, did we?
Not quite, and to be honest with you guys, I don't think we'll finish it today either. So, look, last week we were lucky enough to have an awesome interviewee. He worked with Jose on the Moon documentaries.
Bill Bryson's awesome.
That's it. And again, I would suggest to everybody, even if you haven't listened last week, go to his website, check it out. We've pasted it into our show notes. We'll paste it into the show notes today again, so you can see what that looks like. The pictures are awesome. He's collected a whole bunch of different information. You really have to see it to believe it. And today we have, we've got, again, normally we have show notes. Dave and I put it together, and today we've got 21 pages of show notes. I don't think we'll be able to get through it, Dave. What do you think?
I don't. You know what? We've discussed this. We have production meeting before the show, and
we did.
We did. Like
we've gone corporate.
but how professional are we trying to be? Right?
Yeah,
we really want to bring you guys everything that we want you to know. Right?
Yes, that's true.
And there's too much stuff. I think what we're going to do now, we're just going to say, look, abandon trying to fit it in the 2 hours. If it goes over, it goes over. We'll just continue it next week. And during the week, we'll find some more stuff to bring up.
As we research this, there's a whole bunch of stuff that came up, both for Dave and myself, things we didn't know about the moon, things that may have happened before the moon was there, and people that claim or make certain claims about the existence of the moon and so forth. So it's really interesting stuff. Now, part of the show is tinfoil hat, right? So you're going to have to strap on your safety belts and suspend your individual reality monitors.
Also, don't forget, wear your tinfoil hat and make sure it's folded shiny side out.
But we'll warn you when we come to that.
We will. I want to play a sound. I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna make a sound that this is the sound to wear your tinfoil hat. I think I might make it as the folding of the hat sound or something like that. The crushing or crinkly of foil. It'd be awesome.
Let's do that. Let's do a bit of because we are all sound, right? Let's do some sound effects.
That would be good. So
radio, right?
Yeah. So some of the things that we'll talk about. I've got some links to NASA and the moon, also some things about the Masons, like secret societies, as well. Just to give people a little rundown, Mecky, and how it fits into it, how the moon affects us, how over time, all the things that we've connected to it with, and its vernacular, the whole bunch of stuff. Mecky, what about from your side? There's a lot of
Look, like Dave said, it's part of our history, folklore. It's part of our culture. But there are some things that are very strange about the moon. Okay, we will highlight those things in the second half of the show. In the first half, we'll probably hit you with some more facts, if you will. Dave dug up some great stuff about Masons on the moon. Believe it or not, that should be interesting.
Well, you know, we did the Secret Society show, and I thought that would be really awesome if I could find something. And guess what? Bingo, there it is.
Absolutely.
So if we get to it, it'll be near the end of this show. All right, guys. Otherwise, we might have to bump it till next week. But we're still gonna do it.
Oh no, look, yeah, absolutely. We'll finish the show
one way or another.
The moon, one way or another. I didn't think the moon would have that much material, but in fact it does. This is the second show on the moon. We discussed the moon briefly in other shows when we talk about hollow planets and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly it can stretch into a third show. In fact, you can probably have a radio program just about them every week if you really wanted to.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, let's see. Do we have anything in the news?
Oh, look, absolutely. And this has been a very interesting news week, Dave, as you well know. Let's start with one that worries me a lot, and it worries, I think, most people on Revolution Radio, and certainly of our listeners. And this is the news that came through last week, that Mount Fuji, the iconic Japanese mountain, not extinguished volcano really, but it's active still, is about to blow, or is ready to blow. Now, what is all that about? Cast your mind back a year or so when the Fukushima earthquake happened, which brought the massive tidal wave in, which also happened to destroy the nuclear plant, released a lot of radioactivity, and
affected millions of lives.
And still with fallout and all kinds of things happening. Right now, this particular earthquake triggered something else, and what it did, it triggered an increase in, and I'm going to try to put this in layman terms, seismic pressure under Mount Fuji. So Mount Fuji is an active volcano which last blew in 1707. So that's quite some time ago. But so it's been quiet since then. But what happens underneath the volcano? Pressure builds. Right? It's like a pot that you're boiling. You put a lid on. After a while the lid will rattle, because that's the steam of the pressure building. If you keep boiling it and you really have nowhere else to escape, the lid might blow off, which is what's happening here now. Scientists say that it is the highest pressure it has been in hundreds of years, and it is higher than it was in 1707 when it actually did erupt. Now,
wow.
Yeah, and in the best case scenario, they mentioned there will be 325,000 people immediately killed when it blows, and the ash cloud, of course, into the sky can trigger a mini nuclear winter, depending on how much ash actually gets up there. Krakatoa had a similar effect when it blew in the 1880s.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't really had a massive explosion or eruption like that in the 20th century, except, I guess Mount St. Helens was pretty big, but they believe that Mount Fuji eruption would be much bigger than St. Helens, if you recall, back in the States when that happened. Now, having said that, we're also going to post some of the news articles into the chat.
Yep. That's my job.
Okay, go ahead. Now, this is what worries me. It really worries me because Edgar Cayce actually prophesied Sleeping Prophet. If you're not familiar with him, I urge you to Google him. We'll probably have a show on him in the future. He prophesied that Japan would sink under the waves. That's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned earlier in some other shows that could have been metaphorically referring to radioactive waves.
You talked about that before, but we didn't have any idea this was going on.
Correct. And now it looks like it's actually happening, and if that happens, it blows. It could really upset the tectonic plates that Japan is sitting on. Not only that, but if you go to YouTube, you will find a lot of videos from Japan right now being taken more or less live of mud bubbling up through, I guess, massive ruptures in the earth, and it looks like these pieces of earth, asphalt, could be concrete, are sort of sitting on a bed of porridge.
That's called liquefaction.
Correct. That's exactly right, Dave. So liquefaction is actually the underlying rock strata is, as the name implies, liquefied. will suck the land under, or sections of the land. So that's a new story that I found worrying myself. But Dave has got a very interesting one, I think, on Jupiter.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I thought you might have done the other one, but that doesn't matter. We've everyone this week, you would have noticed in the news there was a supposed meteor strike on Jupiter, and we were surprised to hear last night, and it's out there right now that it's a meteor strike. However, surprising information was brought to hand. We'll keep the sources under wraps at the moment until more information comes out, but it appears as though and anyone in their right mind looking at the video that's been released says that's not a meteor strike. That looks like lightning or something like that. Exactly. Who knows? However, we've been, I shouldn't say led to believe, we've been given information which suggests, in fact, that it isn't just lightning on the surface, that the actual Jupiter arced to one of its moons. An electrical arc. Now, this comes in when Mackie and I were discussing this. We were talking about it as being, the electric universe. Isn't that right, Mackie?
That's correct. Are you guys? If you guys are not familiar with the electric, we will definitely do a show on that.
Yeah.
And we'll post links into the show notes.
Everything we can produce electricity down here. It's clear that it's possible. Planets, and especially Jupiter, it is just a large capacitor. And if you don't know what a capacitor is, it's just layers separated by bits of metal, right? Well, if you put hydrogen under enough pressure, it becomes a metal, and it starts as a liquid metal and a solid metal, and it's under extreme pressure. I mean, think about the size of it. Jupiter is huge, so there's enough pressure there for that to happen. And what was the cause of the arc? Why did Jupiter produce that much electricity? We know that if a cloud goes up tall enough between our insulated layers, that you can get electrical conductivity. Remember, it's the differential between positive and negative. If you create enough differential, you'll get an arc. That's what a Van de Graaff generator does, and we all have one of those in science class or physics. Notwithstanding, the same thing applies, the same physics applies to our magnetic field. In Earth, when the solar wind has too many active particles on it and crushes our magnetic field, right? When it's been bombarded by the sun and the solar wind, that will compress our magnetic field enough to induce current in a wire, right? And that happened back in the 1890s or something like that. And we're lucky in those days we weren't a civilized nation. Sorry, we were civilized. Actually, we're probably more civilized than we are now. That's my opinion.
You're probably not wrong there,
Yeah, I know. I feel that, I think when we had horse and cart, I think we were doing better. But anyway, we might be back there sooner than we think. So the electrical, the magnetic field induces the current in a wire, and it seems as though our evidence, our information that we've been given. Gee, I can talk, can't I? I could talk the leg off a chair. It seems oh, I'm rocking
from a tree into the oven. That's what happened.
So it looks as though the solar wind, and the information we've got, is actually the solar wind is coming back as a wave backwards. It's been interrupted for some reason, and the inward force back towards the sun is causing a wave. We don't know what that means yet. We'll probably see that as we my elderly mother just sat. So Mars is next to experience it, and if we keep our eyes open on Mars, hopefully it's on the same side of the sun as Jupiter. If it's not, then we'll have to wait till it gets to us. So who knows how long it's going to be, but our eyes are open, our information's out there, and we're going to be bringing you updates as soon as we hear about it. Hey, Mackie, can you lighten it up and give us something about Libya?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that'll lighten the mood. I don't know if you guys have been following the news. hard not to. But recently, somebody decided it would be a good idea to post something on YouTube which both offended and incensed the Muslim community. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. What I'm saying is this is what happened. These are the facts. And let me put it this way, okay? If you put petrol in your hair and you hold a lit match next to it, your hair will go up in flames. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
If you put a video on YouTube that says that Muhammad was a womanizer and child molester, I think the outcome is more than obvious. If you expect anything else than what has actually happened, then you would be a fool. So I mean, we all know what happens. The fatwa against Salman Rushdie. When the cartoon, I think it was a Danish guy who drew these cartoons that led to a huge outcry. I mean, some things. I mean, I'm for freedom of speech. Don't get me wrong, I really am. But when this freedom of speech starts to impact on lives, just because you. Let me put it this way. What is the message of this YouTube video? I don't know. I haven't watched it. It's meant to be a movie. Okay, I get it. But was it really necessary to do this and cause all this havoc? You have to be a fool to think that it wouldn't. But it has. Now, there are 4 people dead, including the U.S. ambassador to Libya. Interestingly enough, he seemed to have died from asphyxiation, it seems. So he wasn't directly exposed to the violence, but it was the fire or the secondary effects of the fire that killed him. I find it astonishing, though, that the demonstrators got as far as they did. Now, I could be wrong, and I'd be happy to be corrected here, but I believed that every U.S. embassy or consulate has a contingent of Marines on site.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was the case. Maybe not, because I did not see any Marines in the footage of the burning embassy. Again, I may not have seen everything, so that struck me as odd. And what struck me as odd is that, in fact, the U.S. ambassador to Libya was amongst those killed, who should have been the most highly protected person in that compound. Again, just speculating here, don't know what the story is. What I do know is this: we now have a situation which is more volatile than anything that we've seen in the last 10 years. Dave and I discussed this prior to the show. And we looked at Yugoslavia, we looked at Iraq. Most of the countries that are not Western democratic societies are usually held together by a strong leader. You take that leader away, for example, General Tito in Yugoslavia, Saddam Hussein in the case of Iraq, that country will disintegrate into ethnic minorities. It will fracture along racial or tribal lines, and which is exactly what happened in Yugoslavia, and which led to a war in the 90s in Europe, which to me was unbelievable coming from Europe. Similar things we're seeing in Iraq now. It's breaking up into 3 sections, right, Dave?
Yeah, that's right. Is it not like the leader, even though they may be the worst leader on the planet, but they're the lid to the pressure cooker?
Totally. 100% correct, Dave. I mean, come on, guys. You don't have to like it, but it's called realpolitik. Real politics. This is the truth of the world.
So the leaders kept them under control, and once you pull the leader away, that's just like pandemonium, right?
It's pandemonium, right? The old grudges are reborn. There's jockeying for position. Everybody wants to get a slice of the power cake.
I'll have some power cake.
Yeah, power cake is good. First you get the power, and then you get the women.
Is it chocolate? So look, it's just what's going to happen. Now, I was watching Fox News just to back you up, right? I was watching Fox News, and they were going absolutely berserk, but running the slant of this story as being how bad Islam is, and all these Islamics around the world who have now been polarized by this video, actually not by the video, just polarized against the US. And they showed them spraying pepper spray in Australia against people who were protesting, right? And it was inflaming the violence.
Yes, absolutely.
Pepper spray. And it's like, why? Why on earth were they running the slant? And then at the end of the story it was, they seem to be doing this because of the video that was out there on YouTube. Yeah. Next, a story about a lovely puppy, and it was I was absolutely blown away by the slant. They didn't start with the story. This film is causing people to go crazy. We tried to take it off Google and off YouTube, and they said no.
That's actually Dave. That's a very good point. You know, Google, well, YouTube, and by extension necessarily, have said no. We will not take this video off. And again, as I said earlier, big fan of freedom of speech. Wouldn't be here if I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But when people are getting killed, and especially because this video, I don't know if it adds anything to anything. You know, if it's culturally valuable, if it's a fantastic message, it'll bring peace on earth. If everybody watches it, I don't know. But I doubt it. So if I'm thinking here, if people get killed over this, you know, maybe we should pull the video. But again, I'm not in charge, so it's just...
I hope the video isn't 45 minutes of looking at a flower, right? With subliminals inside the music. I don't know. Maybe there's some guy going, "Yeah, it worked."
No, it's an old man bathing in buttermilk. That's
So look, whatever the content of it, and having not seen it myself, I sort of feel terrible. I should have really watched it, but maybe I don't want to watch it.
yeah.
You know, I'm not interested in that stuff.
If the video is monetized, guys, that means that if you're watching it with the attending ads or advertising that's in there, you're actually supporting whomever has made it. You know.
And imagine if they got 30 million hits, they could be looking at a lot of money, right? And thinking about the deaths that are involved in that, and I don't think that's a great place to be, yeah? So it really puts... why Fox News is just running it as a polarization against America. Now, remember this, and I've said this before. If America wasn't the world policeman, right?
Coming to...
If America wasn't the world police, right, and China was doing it, would you agree? I have to say no. I wouldn't agree with it. I wouldn't agree with anything that China. If China was in place of America doing the same thing, going into countries and taking the leaders out, how would you feel about that? I think that would be awful.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's really quickly and easily determined by just substituting who's doing it with somebody else, just because it's your own country or because it's our I shouldn't say parent country, but you know, we're the little brother of America, and so is, you know, we don't fight so much with England, but you know, we're supposed to be kindred, but you know, we still think that maybe it becomes questionable at this point when lives become involved.
No, look, you're 100% correct, but it goes to speak about the enormous power that I guess it's image consultancy and marketing as well as news media have.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a certain view that is shaped about the United States. There's no doubt about it. And personally, I think the founding of the United States was one of the best things that has ever happened on this planet. Unfortunately, a lot of the ideals were lost or have been lost since then. But it is really like this I guess, this picture of America is not being able to do any wrong. You know, if you look at how many countries were invaded, you know, regimes were cut short compared to other countries. In fact, no one else has done as much.
Hang on, let's call, instead of calling it regimes, let's call it reigns.
Reigns, yes.
Because regime sounds like it's a bad thing.
See, it's a connotation again, which was
bingo.
You're right. You're 100% correct. But I don't want to ride on this too much. I mean, you all understand what is at stake here and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It is just interesting that, in effect, Hillary Clinton has condemned the video. Believe it or not.
Yep.
She has, and this is the thing. It might have been made by someone who is American or from the United States of America. It doesn't mean that the United States of America made it.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? It's how can I put this best? You know, I can't even
let's put it this way. If a taxi driver, we don't even know the origin. Like, we don't. But if a taxi driver in some country, and I mean taxi driver in the nicest way, if someone from any country, from any religion, makes a video posting against some other country, and it gets this kind of thing happening from it, I mean, really, we don't know. We can't blame the country of origin. We can't blame the country of ethnicity as well. I think both of those are the wrong place to start shouting.
No, I agree.
Right? You just blame the creator.
Yeah.
Hang on, Salman Rushdie, is that one?
Yep, that's one.
Hey, what's another one?
Who do we have? Oh, the cartoonist, the Danish guy.
Yeah. He was banned from putting cartoons like that out. There was a court case and everything.
Yep.
So you can't imagine that there'd be anything... Why isn't this person... Oh, because it's freedom of speech. Yeah, freedom of death.
Oh, by the way, Brett Poorman's news. Yeah, it was a Freudian slip, I guess.
Which
United
one was
Nations,
that?
United States. Well, helmet's there soon anyway. The FEMA camps are ready, right? They got a body bag for you and me. So I shouldn't be talking anymore. Otherwise, our servers go down again. But sorry, Hawk. I won't bring it up again.
No, we're good. We're good.
But yeah, look, Dave, this is correct.
We retract the Freudian slip.
Yes, we retract it. It never happened. These are the droids you're looking for.
The whole nation is frozen now, like deer in headlights. Well done. And hey, this is the first day I can't say "take that, Michio Kaku." Hopefully,
He's eating us.
he's 8th. Yeah, awesome. So, anyway, I'm sure we'll get up there now. So, where do you think we left off last time, and where do you want to start with the moon?
Now, last week we discussed at length all the visual phenomena that were happening in the moon, and was really awesome stuff. Now, I think we should talk about maybe the actual moon. So we should talk about the moon. Maybe some stats around the moon, Dave, would be good. We go into maybe some moon formation theories, just general stuff about the moon. So there's a lot of information out there that people may not be aware of, and we'll try to flesh that out for you. So Dave, let's launch into some stats, I think.
No dramas. All right. So the name, the moon, is lunar, which we can only guess the discovery date was prehistory at some point.
Correct.
We don't know who discovered it, but it's 384.4 times 10 to the third kilometers away. And for anyone who isn't in physics or 3-unit maths, good luck. Its mass is 734.9 times 10 to the 20 kilograms. I mean, that's some heavy stuff right there. Its radius, though, in kilometers. Now, we did one in... I think we had one in miles. Yeah, we do.
We do.
All right. So its radius is 1,737 kilometers. Now, that's not very big.
No.
It really isn't. Like, America is, 4,000 kilometers? So it's less than half the distance across the US.
Yeah.
Same as Australia. We've got the same diameter, I suppose, or distance across the country. And its orbital period in days is 29.53. Although it takes only 27.3 days to both rotate on its axis and to orbit the Earth. And that's because the Earth is rotating at the same time. So its orbital period and its one length around, it does seem to contradict each other, but let's just keep going.
These are averages, and some data sources are separate. Like there's one data source which gave us as an orbital period 29.53. Another source gave us
27.3.
But the important thing here is to bear in mind that the rotational and the orbital period are the same. So that means the moon goes around the Earth at the same time it goes around itself, or it spins on its own axis.
That's right. And we just happen to be an extension of that axis. Its axis is our axis as well.
Which leads to a very interesting thing, Dave, which is in fact that the moon always has the same face to the Earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, no, so let me correct this. The same visible face to the Earth.
Yeah, because it's a ball and it's always facing the same side. Now, we don't know if that rotation is 1 millimeter per year change. We don't know because we can't see the change. If there is any change, it's not noticeable from our point of view. But okay, in English, instead of physics language, in English, the average distance from Earth is 238,855 miles. Let's just say it's 239,000 miles away. And in metric, that's 384,000 kilometers. I like kilometers there further. Now, the perigee, the closest in its orbit, because there's an apogee and a perigee, the perigee is 225,000 miles. So there's a difference between 238 and 225, which is 13 miles, or 13,000 miles difference. So its orbit, it does come closer, it does go further away. even though we don't see that. It's not
We-
entirely obvious.
We do. No, there's something called a supermoon, and when it's at the perigee, you will get the supermoon.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like huge, guys. It looks like it's blown up in the sky. So. But I have to say something to the orbital and rotational period. A lot of people talk a lot about why, that the moon is always facing the Earth with the same side. Virtually every satellite in the solar system does this. Phobos and Deimos, the moons of Neptune and Uranus and Saturn, they all do the same thing. Their rotational period is the same as their orbital period. So the Earth moon is not unique in that sense.
It's funny because when we went into this, we had no clue that was the case. We thought this was an anomaly. We thought this was the only one that did it in the whole solar system. But guess what? No, we're wrong.
Yeah.
We were wrong, and we're learning just like you guys. So we're passing that on to you. Trust me on that. So it has an orbital eccentricity of 0.05. There's an inclination of 5.1 degrees. That's an orbital inclination. Okay, you might like this one. This is in meters per second. So if the Earth's gravity is 9.8 meters per second, it's 1.62 meters per second. And remember, that's squared, so that's acceleration. It's got an equatorial escape velocity of 2.38 kilometers per second. I don't know how many that. I should do some maths on that and find out how many kilometers an hour that is, but it's pretty cool. The mean surface temperature, this is going to be something you like. Its mean surface temperature during the day is 107 degrees Celsius, which is 47 degrees or 48 degrees Fahrenheit. And
be much higher, I think. In fact, it would be
no, I'm sorry. Yes, that would be
like 200 degrees Fahrenheit, I think.
My bad.
So this is beyond the boiling point of water, guys.
Yeah, 107. Yeah, is above the boiling point of water. I got that wrong. And the mean surface temperature at night is minus 153 degrees Celsius. Now, minus 273 is 0 Kelvin. So it's halfway there from water freezing to absolute zero. I mean, that doesn't seem to retain much heat at all. Right? So there's no campfire. There's nothing. If you're not inside the thickest insulating materials, you're just going to freeze. It'd be a popsicle, just like Tones was on the previous show. Tones said he wanted to have his body ejected out into space, and I said he'd be a popsicle, and Hawk said he'd be a tonesicle. Okay, so the maximum surface temperature is 123 degrees Celsius, and the minimum is minus 233. Now, I said minus 273 was Kelvin, so it gets pretty cold. I mean, that's almost absolute zero. We're on our way.
That's correct. It's very close to absolute zero.
So if you were to urinate, it would just come out as ice cubes, right?
Good luck with urinating. You'll actually be frozen in your bladder. You'll be all solid. This is what you sound like when I knock on you. That's you.
That's right.
Sound effects,
So we're in the sound medium.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm going to pass it to you.
Okay. Cool. And now, any theory, and we're going to talk about the, the creation of the moon. The formation. Just to be correct and politically, scientifically, religiously, the formation of the moon. How did the moon come into existence? Any theory that explains or wants to explain the moon's formation needs to explain the following facts. Now, these are facts. These are not theories about the moon. Now, fact number one is the moon's low density, which is 3.3 grams per cubic centimeter. And what it shows, essentially, that it does not have a substantial iron core like we think the Earth does. Okay, that's number one. Very low density. We spoke about this before, hollow moon, blah, blah, blah. Also, the moon rocks that we do have and analyzed contain very few volatile substances, such as water, which implies extra baking of the lunar surface relative to that of Earth. Okay, so think about it this way: you've got material, any kind of material, clay, whatever, and the longer you expose it to heat, heat specifically, even cold though, the more the volatile substances like noble gases, water, things like that will escape from that from that substance, and that seems to have happened on the moon. And finally, there's a relative abundance of oxygen isotopes on Earth and on the moon, and they're identical, which suggests that the Earth and moon formed at the same distance from the sun. Not at the same time, but at the same distance from the sun. So these three things need to be explained by the theory that explains wants to explain the formation of the moon. Now, there are 5 series theories. They're not, out there. They're, accepted scientific theories. The first one is the fission theory. And this is the theory that goes that the moon was once part of the Earth and somehow separated from the Earth in the early history of the solar system. The present Pacific Ocean basin, they say, is the most popular site for the part of the Earth from which the moon came. So
if that's how it formed, yes.
Correct, 100%. The second theory is the capture theory. Now, this states that the moon was formed somewhere else, and that could be anywhere else, really, I guess, and was later captured by the gravitational field of the Earth. And that's fair enough theory as well. The third one is the condensation theory, and this is a theory which is, I guess, more to do with the general formation of the solar system. But essentially, the moon and the Earth condensed together from the original nebula that formed the solar system. If you're familiar with the going theory for the solar system creation, there was like a whole bunch of dust, and some of it was more heavier, and then gravitation started to happen, and then it was a rotational thing, and vortices built, and that formed the sun, and then eventually the planets formed. The less dense planets being further away from the sun, which makes sense in that theory. There are a few more theories, Dave. There's the colliding.
The colliding planetesimals theory. The interaction of Earth orbiting and Sun orbiting planetesimals. Now, these are very large chunks of rocks, like asteroids, and they can be bigger or smaller, but they're planetesimals, and they even may have their own moons as well. In the early history of the solar system led to their breakup. The moon condensed from their debris. So that's one of them. And there's also another one called the ejected ring theory, and that's a giant impact theory. A planetesimal the size of Mars. Now, it's hard to call a planetesimal the size of Mars, but I'll kill whoever wrote that. Struck the Earth, ejecting large volumes of matter, and a disk of orbiting material was formed, and this matter eventually condensed to form the moon in orbit around the Earth. One of those things is it's hard to have a disk that then orbits around facing the same position on the Earth all the time. That's very tough. I had trouble with these, but they're the ones that are out there. I'm not going to put my personal belief in there yet. Okay, 2 moons. While the large impact theory is widely accepted as by far the most likely theory, there is at least one question that the theory has difficulty in answering. I've got another question. Why is the far side of the moon so different than the near side? And we discovered that when we had the Gemini series of missions and the early Apollos to find the orbiting characteristics of the moon. While the answer to this question is uncertain, one theory suggests that after the initial impact, not 1 but 2 moons formed around the Earth. However, over time, these 2 spheres started to slow migration towards each other until eventually they collided. The result was a single moon that we are all familiar with, but the differences in terrain and crustal structure leave behind evidence that there may have been one day long ago been 2. So, yeah, I think the jury's still out on that one.
Oh, look, absolutely. And again, guys, these are theories. Okay, it's very important to realize that these theories don't actually explain all of the 3 things that we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the problem. Otherwise, we would have just said, "Yep, that's the theory."
Sure, why not? The one that it just was created of the bits left behind in the orbital disk when the Earth was created. That's the one. Yeah. That seems to make sense, but you've got to look at these things. You stare up at the moon long enough, you're going to come up with another theory.
Absolutely, and in fact, there's a problem with that with all of the theories, and they're in fact right now they're constrained from recent data. A detailed comparison of the properties of lunar and Earth rock samples has placed very strong constraints on the possible validity of these hypotheses. For instance, the moon, if the moon came from material that once made up the Earth, then lunar and terrestrial rocks should be much more similar in composition than if the moon was formed somewhere else and only later captured by the Earth. These analyses indicate that the abundances of elements in lunar and terrestrial material are sufficiently different to make it unlikely that the moon formed directly from the Earth. Generally, work over the last 10 years, 10, 15 years now, I guess, has essentially ruled out the first two explanations and made the third one rather unlikely. At present, the fifth hypothesis, which Dave mentioned, which is the giant impact theory, the ejected ring theory. So there are two names for it, but it's mostly known as giant impact theory. It's the favored one, okay, because the moon was formed from a ring of matter ejected by a collision of a large object with the Earth. Now, Nibiru comes to mind, I guess, to some extent. Sorry for bringing that up. It's tinfoil head zone, I get it. It's the favored hypothesis, I should say. However, the question is not completely settled, and many details are still unaccounted for. There's still answers. I mean, one thing we're going to come to later is the age of the moon rock as to the Earth rocks. Right? That's a real big one. But I can't help but thinking of Nibiru having collided with the Earth. It's just all. And this is accepted science, guys. This is not something that is fringe science or conspiracy theory. These are the current going scientific theories.
And they don't come from crackpots. So one of those. Well, hang on. I'll rephrase that. They come from places that we may consider not always telling the truth. Never a straight answer. NASA have actually agreed with Sitchin's deciphering of the Sumerian text to suggest that a large object hit the pre-Earth and caused it to change its its orbit around the sun, and knocked out a great chunk of it, which became the moon as well. Yep. So that's a large impact one, and NASA are now running with that, which actually agrees with Sumerian text. Now that's just crazy. Who thought that was going to happen? They laughed at Sitchin, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They thought he was a crackpot. And of course, we all think NASA's a crackpot. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Sorry, I'm just withholding information, I think, is where I'd like to stand on that one. So I'm going to paste that. I'm
putting the links in, Dave.
Oh, yeah, you put it in there, cool. All right. So look, talking about the moon, we can't talk about the moon without talking about its internal structure.
Yes.
So the moon is very likely has a small core. Now, we talked about it only having 2 cubic... Yeah.
3.3 grams per cubic centimeter.
That's right. All over because of its orbital velocity, right? And it hasn't reached escape velocity, and it's not coming closer. In fact, it's slowly drifting away from us. So just 1 to 2% of the moon's mass, and roughly 420 miles or 680 kilometers wide, it likely consists mostly of iron, but may also contain large amounts of sulfur and other elements. Its rocky mantle is about 800. Now, this is conjecture because no one's actually looked at it, but it's supposed that its rocky mantle is about 825 miles, which is about 1,300 kilometers thick, and made up of dense rocks rich in iron and magnesium. That was one of the differences, wasn't it, Meki? Yes. The amount of magnesium in the iron. Magmas in the mantle made their way to the surface in the past, erupted volcanically for more than a... Yeah, that's right. There's so many disclaimers in here. From at least 4 billion years ago to a fewer than 3 billion years past. The crust on top of that averages some 42 miles or 70 k's thick. The outermost part of the crust is broken and jumbled due to all the large impacts it has received. A shattered zone that gives way to that gives way to intact material below a depth of about 6 miles. So in geological terms, it's no different than having bedrock, and then there's a rock strata which is made up of a composition of the broken bedrock, and then as you get towards the surface, you end up with more organic material, sand, and alluvial soils with sedimentary. So I mean, I did geology as well, so that's they're describing or trying to or attempting to describe the same thing there, but we don't have any evidence of there being liquid water flowing on the moon, and it's hard to believe that anything other than impacts are going to have or break away anything other than the bedrock to make what we see. But we know that it's covered in the finest talcum powder sized dust, which is just amazing, and when we'll get to more of that. So like the 4 inner planets, the moon is rocky. It's pockmarked with craters formed by asteroid impacts millions of years ago. Because there is no weather, the craters have never eroded. The average composition of the lunar surface by weight is roughly 43% oxygen, 20% silicon, 19% magnesium, 10% iron, 3% calcium. I don't know where it got the calcium from. 3% aluminum, and 0.42% chromium. Well, that's cool. And 8.818% titanium and 0.12% magnesium.
Manganese.
Sorry, manganese. I'm sorry. Look, the makeup of those rocks don't match the Earth, do they, Mekki?
No, they don't. And we go into that in some more detail further down. Interestingly, as well, as far as the surface of the moon is concerned, this is something that just came to my mind. Sorry, Dave, we didn't actually put it in the notes, but I'm going to mention it here. The deepest crater in the solar system is on the moon. It's on the South Pole, and it was recently examined, I think, by...
Examined, you mean it impacted?
Yeah, it was. It was impacted, and there seems to be some frozen ice there. Frozen ice, as opposed to the liquid ice.
No, it's a gaseous ice.
Gaseous ice. Yeah, so, no, there's ice, and quite a bit. Apparently not enough to start a colony, but that's certainly interesting that the moon's South Pole and the deepest crater in the solar system has ice in it. So I'll let you think about that. The atmosphere of the moon is almost non-existent in modern times, I should say, maybe. A layer of dust can sit undisturbed for centuries. Footprint, you're all probably familiar with the iconic footprint that what's his name? Armstrong allegedly left on the moon. Allegedly.
Name? Gee, that was too soon?
Too soon. I'm sorry.
That guy.
Moon guy.
The moon guy.
Now, without an atmosphere, obviously, we know this is the greenhouse effect. You can't hold heat near the planet. So, like Dave mentioned earlier, the temperatures vary wildly, and we've got huge differences in temperatures on the moon. Interestingly, the moon itself is the brightest object in the night sky when you can see it.
Magnitude 12, by the way.
Sorry?
Magnitude minus 12, I think it was.
Right, yeah, yep, that's right. And it has created a rhythm that has guided humanity for millennia. Well, there's a whole bunch of things we're going to go into. For instance, calendar months are roughly equal to the time it takes to go from one full moon to the next. In fact, the Chinese still have a lunar calendar, or actually quite a few Asian nations have a lunar calendar rather than a solar calendar that we follow in the West. I know this because my wife is Chinese, and we have a lunar calendar downstairs. Now, it doesn't coincide with the solar calendar, which is interesting. It's slightly out of whack. Some ancient people believed that the moon was a ball of fire, while others thought it was a mirror that reflected Earth's lands and seas. Now, that's actually not a bad idea, that the mirror component, but it isn't, as we know now. It reflects the sunlight rather than the Earth. But ancient Greek philosophers knew the moon was a sphere orbiting the Earth, whose moonlight reflected sunlight. So we're talking 3,500 years ago, people knew what it was, which is actually astonishing if you think about it, right? We don't give them that much credit. The Greeks also believed the dark areas of the moon were seas, while the bright regions were land, which influenced the current names for those places, Maria and Terra, which is Latin for both sea and land, respectively. The scientist Galileo was the first guy to use a telescope to make scientific observations of the moon in modern times that we know of. Again, I'm giving you all these disclaimers because of the arc we're trying to draw. Look, we believe that civilization is a lot older than it is. And he describes a rough mountainous surface in 1609, which was quite a different from the popular beliefs of his day, that the moon was in fact a smooth object. In 1959, the Soviet Union sent the first spacecraft to impact the moon's surface. So it wasn't the States, it was actually the Soviet Union, and returned the first photographs of its far side. In 1969, 10 years later, the United States allegedly landed the first astronaut on the moon. Sorry, I have to say allegedly, because I'm not convinced yet. Undoubtedly the most famous NASA achievement, which, the moon landing. Now, but if you follow the Apollo mission and the development, you really do have to question what really went on. And in fact, maybe the Germans went there before. Who don't? Too far. I know. Real back. Now, interestingly enough, though, apparently NASA has managed to collect 842 pounds, which equates to 382 kilograms, which is a small car, of rocks and soil to Earth for study. So that's how much moon rock we have. 382 kilograms. That's 3 rather large-sized men. Think UFC. You got 3 of those guys.
Or they might have said they brought that back, but I'll get to that later.
Correct. And it is allegedly, once again, the only extraterrestrial body that humanity has ever visited. Again, after a long interlude, and this is interesting, and I have no explanation, and I don't know, Dave, I don't know if you came across anything, but for a long time there was zero activity as far as the moon was concerned. For close to 30 years, there was no lunar exploration happening at all. Sorry, it's more like 20 years, close to 20 years. There was no lunar exploration, there was nothing. It resumed in the 1990s with the US robotic mission called Clementine, which we're all familiar with, I hope.
Yep.
Jose Escamilla, guys, you must watch that documentary.
Celestial.
You have to watch it. You must watch it. The pictures that were brought back by Clementine and Prospector were astonishing. Both missions suggested water, and we know now that is in fact true. At the lunar poles, the deepest South Pole, as I said, the deepest crater does have ice. And hence, the joint launch of the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and the Lunar Crater Observation and Sensing Satellite helped prove were real in 2009. Okay, so we don't have the hints anymore. We know, in fact, it is true. In 2011, NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, LRO, sent back the best moon map ever. The Chinese have since sent one back as well. So we have pretty good moon maps at the moment, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. Some more interesting moon facts. Lunar months. Our months correspond approximately to the length of time it takes our natural satellite, the moon, to go through a full cycle of phases. From excavated tally sticks, researchers have deduced that people from as early as the Paleolithic period counted days in relation to the moon's phases. But there are actually 4 different kinds of lunar months. The durations listed below. We have anomalistic. The length of time it takes the moon to circle the Earth, measured from one perigee, the closest point of its orbit, to the next, which is 27 days, 13 hours, 18 minutes. The nautical, the length of time it takes the moon to pass through one of its nodes, where it crosses the plane of the Earth's orbit, and return is 27 days, 5 hours, not 13 hours. The sidereal, the length of time it takes the moon to circle the Earth using the stars as a reference point, and that's the olden days way of doing it. That's 27 days, 7 hours, so it's sort of midway between those two. And the synodical, which is the length of time it takes the moon to circle the Earth using the sun as a reference point. That is, the time lapse between the 2 successive conjunctions with the sun, going from new moon to new moon, which is 29 days. That's why we have this discrepancy in how we measure it. So we see slightly more than half of the moon from Earth, which is a little ironistic, because most, and that's a word I just made up.
Ironistic, I like it.
What the hell? English is made to make words up, I swear.
Isn't
we don't
it
have
though?
enough words, surely.
The word is perfectly cromulent, I think.
I remember you saying, there's a long time since we said that. Most reference books will will note that because the moon rotates only once during each revolution about the Earth, we never see more than half of its total surface. Well, that's not true. We actually get to see more of it over the course of its elliptical orbit, which is about 59%, almost 3/5. The moon's rate of rotation is uniform, but its rate of revolution is not. So we're able to see just around the edge of each limb from time to time. Put another way, the two motions do not keep perfectly in step. Now, we know that it's sometimes closer, sometimes further away. Even though they come out together at the end of the month, we call this effect libration of longitude. So the moon's rocks in the east and west direction, allowing us... so the moon rocks backwards and forwards in the east and west direction, allowing us to see farther around in longitude at each edge than we otherwise could. The remaining 41% can never be seen from our vantage point, and if anyone were on that region of the moon, they would never see the Earth. So that'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Never seeing it again. It would take hundreds of thousands of moons to equal the brightness of the sun. So it's only a small fraction. It's a poor reflector of the sun's energy as well. And because of its convex shape, most of the light is scattered away from the Earth.
That's correct.
The moon shines with a magnitude of minus 12.7, I said that before, but the sun is a 14 magnitude. It's 14 magnitudes brighter at minus 26.7. Minus being, you think about it the opposite way. The ratio of brightness of the sun versus the moon amounts to a difference of 398,110 to 1.
So you're not going to go blind looking at the moon, are you?
Not so much, but if you are using a telescope, please put a moon lens, moon filter on there.
And you're not getting a moon burn either, is that right?
Actually, I've got a moon tan. I'm in IT.
Yes, it's your Pella. It's very nice.
What you need to do is when someone takes a photo of me, I suggest they just change the tone by sliding it up and down in Facebook. In Photoshop. So that's how many full moons you would need to equal the brightness of the sun. But this is all a moot point, because there is no way that you could fit that many moons in the sky. It would completely surround the Earth if we had 398,000 moons. So it's, like I said, it's a terribly poor reflector. The sky is only 360 around, and so each, including the half we can't see below the horizon. So there are over 41,000 square degrees in the sky. The moon measures only a half a degree across, which gives it an area of about 0.2 degrees, or 0.2 square degrees. So you could fill up the entire sky, including half that lies below our feet, with 206,000 full moons in the visible area of the sky, and still come up short by about 191,000 times to match the brightness of the sun. I mean, this is just a bit of silliness, but you can see we're making a point there that it really isn't that bright. It's rather like a neighbour of mine.
Most people I deal with on a daily basis, but I didn't say that.
We love everybody.
Of course.
I kid because I love. That's another crusty joke. That's two crusty jokes tonight. The first or last quarter of the moon is not one half as bright as our full moon. If the moon's surface were like a perfectly smooth billiard ball, its surface brightness would be same all over, but in such a case, it would indeed appear half as bright. But the moon has a very rough topology, especially near and along the day-night line, known as the terminator. I'll be back. The lunar landscape appears riddled with innumerable shadows cast by mountains, boulders, and even tiny grains of lunar dust. Also, the moon's face is splotched with dark regions. Now, we've seen that on the colour of the moon. It looks like soil. The end result is that the first quarter, the moon appears only 1/11th as bright as when it's full. So at only a quarter of the moon, it's only 11th brightness. The moon is actually a little brighter at first quarter than at last quarter, since at that phase, some parts of the moon reflect sun better than others. Like, this is awesome data, guys.
Yeah,
I didn't even. I knew almost none of that stat.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we do communicate this before we go into the more I guess mysterious and strange things about the moon. Let's talk about the moon as it is there. Let's talk about all the moon facts. Let's lay it all down there. We're not finished yet. There's a bit more to come, and in fact we probably have to do some more after the break. I don't want to preempt it, but I think we'll be able to get through a few more facts here as well. Now, a 95% illuminated moon appears half as bright as a full moon. Now, this is interesting. The moon is half as bright as a full moon about 2.5 days before and after a full moon, even though about 95% of the moon is illuminated at this time. And to most casual observers, it might still look like a full moon, but the brightness is roughly 0.7 magnitudes less than at full phase, making it appear only half as bright. Don't know why. It's just a fact about the moon. Now, the Earth, as soon from the moon, also goes through phases. Obviously, you've seen the pictures of the Earth in half shadow. So it does go through the crescent shapes similarly to the moon as well. An interesting fact about the moon, though, is, and I'm just going to flash this in here, nobody has been able to replicate the way we see the moon go through phases. So on Earth here, there are a couple of people in laboratories that have set up, like a moon, Earth, Sun kind of scenario. And they try to replicate the way that the shadows and the phases of the moon move across the moon, in fact. Not been able to replicate that. Don't know why. Just some food for thought there. It doesn't make any sense. Eclipses are reversed when viewing them from the moon. Phases aren't the only thing that are seen reversed from the moon, like the phases of the Earth. An eclipse of the moon for us is an eclipse of the sun from the moon. Okay, in this case, the disk of the Earth appears to block out the sun. So obviously, it's the exact reverse. So normal an eclipse is when the moon blocks the sun. And interestingly, we're going to talk about that later, the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun, but also 400 times closer to the Earth.
So you're saying that's what?
Oh, so what I'm saying is that's a very strange coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And that's the reason why it does a full blank out of the sun.
Absolutely.
That's why we get an eclipse. Otherwise, it would just be this small dot going past the sun, and we hardly notice.
In fact, that's what happens with pretty much every other satellite system within the solar system. There are no other satellites that eclipse the sun as viewed from the planet they're orbiting. Okay, that is a unique feature. Okay, we have 2 minutes till the break. Quickly want to tell you about how the moon's craters are named. There's actually a rule for that. There are about 300,000 craters wider than 1 kilometer on the moon's near side. So that's quite a bit. And they're normally named for scholars, scientists, artists, explorers. For example, the Copernicus crater is named for Nicolaus Copernicus, a Polish astronomer. The Archimedes crater is named for the Greek mathematician Archimedes, the guy who said, "Eureka!" and then he was killed in his bath by invading Spartans or maybe someone else. The custom of applying personal names to the lunar formations began in 1645 with Michael van Landgren, an engineer in Brussels who named the moon's principal features after kings and great people on the Earth. And we can imagine that those were the people that sponsored him. So it's an early form of advertisement, I guess. On his lunar map, he named the largest lunar plain, now known as Oceanus Procellarum, after his patron, there you go, the guy who supported him, Philip IV of Spain. But just 6 years later, Giovanni Riccioli of Bologna completed his own great lunar map, which removed the names bestowed by Van Landgren. And I think we've got the break coming up. We'll be back with more moon afterwards, I think, Dave.
Eat it.
Oh.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio. We'll be right back after the short break, so stay tuned.
This this is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Be survival from gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it, I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? We'll squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Intuitive improvisation. The secret of genius.
Oh, I see.
I put my pants on,
So,
just like the rest of you, one leg at a time.
I guess I'll have to watch.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more Jaka.
Uh-huh.
I turned cities into salt.
Oh, okay.
You gotta come work for me.
Right. Uh-huh.
I could get you in now. You love it. Nobody tells you when to go to bed.
You want to call in? Sure.
All day, all night.
If you want to fight or you got something more important,
You eat all the ice cream you want.
I'll take that too.
You're talking to me all wrong. It's
Um,
wrong tone.
I'm not adding all these people. I don't know all these people. So, oh, I see. Right. Uh-huh. Yeah, I'll have a challenge.
In reality, it's a hijacker. Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern.
Are you getting the complete truth, the dirty truth of what's really happening behind the scenes? From global corporatism and supply-side economics, the end of globalization itself. Suppressed knowledge by corporate America and the mass media. Tune into Revolution Radio here at freedomslips.com, the home of weaponized talk radio, to hear the dirty truth with Rick Trusick. And that's every Saturday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We will see you there. So you don't need to expect us. We're already here. Revolution Radio.
All right. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Hey, we're still going with Shiny Side Out. This is Dave.
And Mackie.
We're part of Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. You can join us by joining us in the chat, following us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. You can get in contact with us directly by email. If you can look at the show notes, we've got guest bios, previous shows, everything there you've ever wanted to know, and we've even got some merchandise if you're interested in. So, Mackie, where were we? Earth's Mackie.
I was on mute again. I don't know how. I was not, and then I was. It's very crazy. I'm sorry. We're talking about how craters on the moon are named, and I was going to quickly tell you guys how they are named today. So
actually, that was sorry about that. That was really funny. Earth to Meki.
We got a problem, Houston. Oh, we got many problems. Now, today, the names of craters tend to fall into two groups. Typically, moon craters have been named for deceased scientists, scholars, explorers, and artists who've become known for their contributions to their respective fields. The craters around the Apollo, the craters around the Apollo crater and the Mare Moscoviense are to be named after deceased American astronauts and Russian cosmonauts. So we can probably get an Armstrong crater pretty soon. So that's how we name it. It's just an interesting thing, I think, to just discuss. Hovey made a good point, though, in the chat room, and this is just to remind you guys, please do join our chat. We are interactive. We do take on the questions that are coming through the chat, and we do encourage you to log in and speak to like-minded people online as we have the show here. So Hovey raised the question of the moon dust. Good point. Initially, when the moon landings were prepared for the Apollo mission, the scientists were afraid that the astronauts would sink into dust. Whoa! Hello?
Yes.
Is this a sound effect?
Sound effect.
Whoa.
Is there anybody out there?
Wow.
So yeah, I don't know what you're experiencing. If you could describe it to me, that'd be fantastic.
Well, I'm hearing music and space sounds. I think it's the Sputnik signal, right?
Awesome. Well, I am not getting them. Maybe it's from a website you have open.
Oh, really?
That's okay. They're not coming through.
I don't have a website open though. That's the thing.
That's okay. Goodness me.
Sorry, guys.
You need your tinfoil hat back on, man.
I do.
Because that's being transmitted by the satellites now. So how thick did they think that the lunar dust was?
It was meant to be several thousand feet thick. That's what they thought it would be. So that's quite large. So sorry guys, I've just had some interference, I think, from NASA or CIA. I'm really sorry for the confusion I transmitted. But it wasn't. In fact, if you do recall the landing or the alleged landing of the Apollo mission, there was a little bit of dust blown up. Do you remember that? As it came down?
Oh, yeah.
But what is odd, and again, this is probably going into the conspiracy realm, but there was no dust on the lunar module in any of the pictures taken. If you go back to the pictures, guys, you will see that there's gold foil and there's the pot-like feet. None of it had any dust on it.
Hang on. Now, I'm going to interject here. That was Apollo 11 that didn't have the...
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Well, it wasn't. I think 14 had some extremely difficult problems with dust.
But why... Anyway, but this is the point. Why did 11 not go there? And that's a different question for different
yeah.
However, we've talked about the temperature ranges on the moon. There are massive differences in the temperature. And today, if I understand, the moon has its own time zones.
Yeah, it does, actually. Look, it's possible to tell the time when you're on the moon, right? So, in fact, back in the 1970s, Hellbros watchers asked Kenneth L. Franklin, who for many years was the chief astronomer at New York's Hayden Planetarium, to design a watch for the moonwalkers that measure time in what we call lunations, sort of like an Earth day, but because the period it takes the moon to rotate and revolve around the Earth. Each lunation is exactly 29.53 Earth days, and we've covered that before. But for the moon, Franklin developed a system he called lunar mean solar time. You think it's difficult having a radio show with Eastern Standard Daylight, Eastern Pacific, whatever it is, Pacific time. You think that's a daylight savings time? It's very difficult. So he made another one called lunar mean solar time, or lunar time, or LT. He envisioned local lunar time zones similar to standard time zones on Earth. What an idiot. But based on... because it's the pits. But based on meridians that are 12 degrees wide. Okay, so on Earth, if they're 15 degrees intervals, he said they will be named unambiguously as 36 degree east zone time, etc. Although Copernican time, West Tranquility time, and others may be adopted as convenient. Because remember, they didn't traverse the area very much. They stayed roughly within, well, that's conjecture there as well, but they stayed roughly within those 12-degree segments. And it would be awful if they were 1 meter out, and every time they went to the left side of the LEM, they'd have to change the time zone. That would be just ridiculous. And since there's no one else there needing to work the time, it all seemed a bit pointless. But anyway, interestingly, one moon watch was sent to the President of the United States at the time, Richard M. Nixon, who sent a thank you note to Franklin. The note and another moon watch were kept in a display case at the Hayden Planetarium for several years. Quite a few visitors would openly wonder why Nixon was presented with a wristwatch that could be used only on the moon. And I do that right now while I'm reading it. 40 years have come and gone without the watch becoming a big seller. Now, look, there's no doubt in that. I think the whole thing was a bit too ridiculous. Obviously, right now we would change that to be, some kind of digital time, not the analog time that we're used to. It'd be probably decimal, and we probably use GMT still or some galactic units. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so the Earth and Moon orbital relationships, and this is pretty hard. We take this for granted, but all life on Earth, all sea life, also the coastal. What's the area of? Oh, never mind. Between the high tide and low tide, the intertidal zone.
Very good.
All that life relies on the moon. Otherwise, you just wouldn't replicate, right?
Oh, in fact, sorry, you made a very good point. People say that evolution wouldn't have been possible without the tidal forces.
Well, exactly, because nothing would have wanted to have walked out of the ocean because they were left stranded in shallow pools and things like that. So yeah, that has to be said, I think, at this point.
Yep.
So the moon's gravity pulls at the Earth, causing predictable rises and falls in sea levels known as tides. To a much smaller extent, tides also occur in lakes, the atmosphere, and within the Earth's crust. High tides are when water bulges. We all know this one, but bulges upward towards the moon, and low tides are when the water drops down. High tides result on the side of the Earth nearest the moon due to gravity, but it also occurs on the farther side. I know this off by heart. On the other side, due to inertia of water having to spill back in its pool.
Correct.
So it's been pooled, goes away, and it actually bounces back again. So low tides occur between the two humps of being pulled away. Now, they actually try to follow the moon, but there is a delay. So they're not exactly above the high tide. If you look up, the moon isn't standing there. Okay, so we also have king tides here, where there's a greater water spilling away from the South Pole in the melts, a lot of fresh water, and there's more water moving towards the equatorial regions of the Earth, waiting for winter time again for it to accumulate in the southern hemisphere.
Interestingly, ladies or women's cycles, to be scientifically speaking, are also lining up to tidal forces.
Absolutely, they've got a 28-day thing going on.
Yep.
And it's also said that while we were hunter-gatherers, and we would hunt during the full moon. And guess what time that is, fellas? It's the time where we want to be hunting.
Yes.
All right. That's as diplomatically correct as I could get there without saying anything in detail.
Can I just say on that? Sorry, I got to say this because
Here he goes.
There's a tribe in the Himalayas thought to have been left over from Alexander the Great. They are ethnically not Asian or Asiatic, but more Mediterranean in their appearance. And they have a tradition where women that are experiencing their cycle are actually going to a lady's house for the period in which the cycle occurs, like a mini holiday. It's just men can't go there and women don't work, and it's a very interesting custom. And I'm telling you, it's maybe not a bad idea.
That sounds actually pretty good.
Yeah.
If you've ever tried to run holding out in front of you a half full bucket of water, you'll understand where I'm going with this next one. Okay, the moon, the pull of the moon is also slowing the Earth's rotation, an effect known as tidal braking that increases the length of the day by about 2.3 milliseconds per century. The energy that the Earth loses is picked up by the moon, increasing its distance from the Earth, which means the moon gets farther away by 3.8 centimeters annually, which is about an inch. Just a bit more than an inch. So the moon's gravitational pull might have been key to making Earth livable on the planet. By moderating the degree of wobble in the Earth's axial tilt. And we talked about this last week, right? Which led to a relatively stable climate over billions of years where life could flourish. That is very important to remember.
Now, I think we should quickly explain, and this is probably fundamental, but the only reason we have seasons is because we have an axial tilt. If we did not have an axial tilt, so if the Earth was rotating around on its axis to a 90-degree angle to the equator, right? So axis, equator, 90 degrees. If that were the case, there would be no seasons. There would be
wherever you lived would be the temperature it was year-round.
Correct. And point in case is the equator, where the axial tilt is, well, 0. Because it is the equator, right?
Well, it's 0 twice a year.
Correct.
Because of the Capricorn and what's the other one? Sagittarius?
Yes.
Capricorn, the lines, yep.
Tropics of, that's tropics, yeah, that's exactly right.
And they're the extents of the equator from summer to winter, which is the extent of our tilt.
Exactly, and because the tilt is much less in reality at the equator, it's much more pronounced the further you move along the axis. The equatorial weather and seasonal temperature is virtually the same all year round. Sorry, just needed to say that. So, and you're right, Dave. So we think, because there's still a wobble to that tilt as well. The Earth is still wobbling slightly, and that's called I forget what the scientific name for that is. But the moon helps stabilizing the wobble, and the wobble we think may have been from an impact or a massive, Mount Yosemite type explosion of a volcano, supervolcano potentially, and we're still slightly vibrating from that.
Well, the funny thing is also is that the Earth's has an apogee and a perigee around the sun.
Yep.
So if the moon has the same thing, it seems unlikely that it was it would formed naturally in its place because it would have a perfectly circular orbit. But we're getting pulled around the sun, and with the extra gravity as on our perigee accelerating away from the sun again, we experience the same thing. So maybe that's pulling on the moon as well, and we go, there's this double thing going on. We know that we get king tides in summertime because we're closer to the sun, and the moon is closer to us during its perigee, and we get king tides from that. So it's enough to give us like a whole nother foot of water increase, high tides. Which can give us inundation just from the tide.
Absolutely. Now we've talked a lot about facts, Dave. Here, right? I mean, I'm sure people's heads are smoking.
If they haven't exploded altogether.
I know. Can you give us some maybe lighter facts? Thanks.
What were you talking about?
Are you still up? Anybody with me? No. I think Dave did a great job, and he put together some interesting light facts about the moon.
Well, these are just some fun things, right? I figured that we can't talk about it without talking about these. The song has been such an influence on our not just our psyche, but in our modern culture, and culture going back as far as we can imagine. I'm sure that the caveman with sticks would have been tapping together a beautiful tune and singing about the moon, because these are the ones that I know you're going to know who they are. So Kiko, and these are top 10 songs about the moon, by the way. So I thought I might say that. So Kiko and the Lavender Moon, Los Lobos, Moon Dance by Van Morrison, Whole of the Moon by the Waterboys. So I saw the crescent, but you saw the whole of the moon. There's a lyric there. Harvest Moon by Neil Young, Pink Moon, Nick Drake. I don't even know what that song is. Yellow Moon, the Neville Brothers. There is a moon in the sky called the moon. That's a little self-exaggerating there, but certainly the B-52s are a great band, and I just missed seeing them when I was in Cali in '82. Moon River, Louis Armstrong.
Moon River.
Bark at the Moon by Ozzy Osbourne, and Blue Moon by the Marcells. All right. So look, those things, that thing, I was going to say, that damn thing up in the sky that we all stare at when it's bright, influences us. And it doesn't just influence us in other ways. Like it enters our entire culture.
And look, the moon has been very important in especially in the Eastern cultures, and I'm talking about the Near East, or the Middle East nowadays, in the countries of the Mediterranean down into Arabia. Most of the flags there you will see have the crescent, as its emblem. Turkey and most of the Arab countries, Malaysia, Singapore as well. You have the crescent being present as the national symbol, and it's a very deep-seated thing with the moon and us. It's the only satellite that we have. It's the brightest thing that we can see, at night, and it's quite mysterious. Now, we will talk a little bit about the presence of the moon and pre-moon people toward the tinfoil head side of the show. But Dave makes a good point. It is part of our psyche. We can't imagine our sky without the moon. In fact, life as we know it may not be possible without the moon. Certainly, if the moon was taken away, our Earth would go through some extreme changes. Now, but let's go into the strange facts of the moon. Up to this point, Dave and I have pretty much just told you what science has accepted, what science has found, and what they're happy to teach you in school, right, Dave? I mean, we haven't really gone too far out of our way to be controversial up to this point.
Oh, here it comes.
Now, this is not where the strangeness starts. And we're going to start off a bit slowly, and we ease you into it. But as soon as we hit the tinfoil head area, we'll warn you. But the moon's age is the first thing that is odd. The moon is far older than was previously expected, based on the rock samples that have been taken. And maybe even older than the Earth or the Sun.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. The oldest age for the Earth is estimated to be 4.6 billion years old. And if you cast your mind back, we have discussed dating methods, radioisotope dating and so forth. And
that's right.
Relative to absolute dating, you can go back to our show notes. They're on our site, or listen to the show on YouTube. And so the Earth, about 4.6 billion. The Moon, rocks were dated at 5.3 billion.
Hang on. That's a bit older.
That's 700 million years older, yeah. And
hang on, that's more than that. No, you're right.
No, I am.
700 million, absolutely.
But wait for this. And the dust upon which they were resting was at least another billion years older than that, so 6.3 billion years. Okay? So this is really strange. The chemical composition of the dust upon which the rocks sit is remarkably different from the rocks themselves. This indicates that the lunar surface may have been moved from somewhere else and placed on the moon. Okay? Some of the moon's craters originated internally. Yet there's no indication that the moon was ever hot enough to produce volcanic eruptions. Hundreds of moonquakes are recorded each year that cannot be attributed to meteor strikes. Some of the quakes seem to follow a specific schedule.
Right? Yeah, that sounds mechanical.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Now, the rock's origin, right, as we said, the chemical composition of the dust upon which the rock sat was different. So they had to come from somewhere else. We just don't know where. That's really the takeaway here, guys, right? And the almost clockwork appearance of quakes on the moon. So two things which don't make sense. Now, also, heavier elements on the surface. Normal planetary composition results in heavy elements in the core and lighter materials on the surface. It's really 101, right? But not on the moon. Okay? Apparently, the abundance of refractory elements like titanium in the surface areas is so pronounced that several geologists proposed the refractory compounds were brought to the moon's surface in great quantity in some unknown way. They don't know how, but it was done. But that it was done cannot be questioned. Now, this is scientists. I'm not saying this way, but the moon quantity in some unknown way, and that's how it is. We don't know how, but the thing is, it was done, guys. This is a fact. The surface of the moon and the material of the moon's surface is heavier than the core and mantle material. Different for every other planet. Okay, the lighter materials are on the outside, and it makes sense. If something coalesces, if something forms solid, the center usually, due to centrifugal force, have this thing. Okay, normally. That's normally the greater density is encountered at the center of something simply for pressure reasons. Think about it this way, right? If you dive in the ocean, the further down you dive, the greater the pressure gets, and that's because there's more and more mass on top of you, which compacts the mass below it. So the density of the water at 10 kilometers is much, much higher than the density of the water at the surface. The same goes for rocks. Naturally, right? That's how diamonds are formed, we think, somewhere inside the earth, it's massive pressure, massive heat. And on the moon, though, exact opposite. Okay. Water vapor. On March 7, 1971, lunar instruments placed by the astronauts recorded a vapor cloud of water across the surface of the moon. A vapor cloud. Sorry, I have to repeat myself. The cloud lasted 14 hours. And covered an area of about 100 square miles. Not making this up, that's a fact. Magnetic rocks. Moon rocks were magnetized. Now that's strange, Dave, because there's no magnetic field on the moon.
No.
Okay, so how do you magnetize these rocks? Not originated from a close call with Earth. That's ripped the moon apart. It's become magnetized. Good question. Now again, this is not crazy stuff, this is fact. There are no volcanoes on the moon. Some of the moon's craters originated internally, yet there's no indication that the moon was ever enough to produce volcanic eruptions, like I said earlier. Okay, this is important as well. And the craters are very, very shallow, Dave, right?
Absolutely. Even though the largest one seems to be at the base of the moon, on its axis, they're all unusually shallow.
Yes. Very.
And most of the impact, the rock that impacted is visible in the center of the crater itself. So it's like it's gone ding onto something in very, very shallow dust.
But are they concave or convex, these craters?
Well, that depends on where you're looking.
But some are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is another one. So Dave, it looks like there's hard, rounded surface underneath where you would expect an indentation. You actually have a bulge. So it's
like a bubble, like the skin of a bubble. It makes no sense.
Absolutely. Moon mescons. Now, mescons are large, dense, circular masses lying 20 to 40 miles beneath the centers of the moon's maria. The maria are the seas. They are broad, disc-shaped objects that could be possibly some kind of artificial construction. Huge circular discs are likely to be beneath each huge maria, centered like bullseyes in the middle of each by coincidence or accident. So these mescons exist, and we just don't know how they got there. We don't know how they're formed. We have no idea what process would bring them into existence. Again, remember how we said there's no seismic activity on the moon? Well, there seems to be, right? The moonquakes we discussed earlier. They're recorded each year, and they cannot be attributed to meteor strikes. We would see that many meteors. In November 1958, Soviet astronomer Nikolai A. Kozyrev of the Crimean Astrophysical Observatory photographed a gaseous eruption near the crater Alphonsus. He also detected a reddish glow that lasted for about an hour. In 1963, astronomers at the Lowell Observatory also saw a reddish glow on the crest of ridges in the Aristarchus region. These observations have proved to be precisely identical and periodical, repeating themselves as the moon moves closer to the Earth. These are probably not natural phenomena. Remember the clockwork thing? This is to the moonquakes. Again, we have no idea what's going on there. Now it's getting a little...
I think begin folding your hat.
Folding. Now we're going to talk about the whole... The moon's mean we spoke about is 3.3 grams per cubic centimeter. Okay? Which is 3.34 times an equal volume of water. What does this mean? Right. In 1962, NASA scientist Dr. Gordon MacDonald stated the following. If the astronomical data are reduced, it is found that the data require that the interior of the moon is more likely a hollow than a homogeneous sphere, pretty much the same material throughout. No, Dr. Harold Urey suggests the moon's reduced densities because of large areas inside the moon where there is simply a cavity. MIT's Dr. Sean C. Solomon wrote the following: the lunar orbiter experiments vastly improved our knowledge of the gravitational field, indicating the possibility, I don't know what, that the moon might be hollow. In Carl Sagan's treatise, I should say, or Intelligent Life in the Universe, the famous astronomer stated this: a natural satellite cannot be a hollow object.
Mm-hmm.
So we have these eminent scientists telling us, well, it's probably hollow. And then Sagan says, well, you know what? If it's hollow, it's probably not natural.
Exactly. So that takes us to Moon Echoes. And on the November 20th, 1969, the Apollo 12 crew jettisoned the lunar module ascent stage, causing it to crash onto the moon. The LEM's impact, about 40 miles from the Apollo 12 landing site, created an artificial moonquake with startling characteristics. The moon reverberated like a bell for more than an hour. This phenomenon was repeated with Apollo 13, intentionally commanding the third stage to impact the moon, with even more startling results. Seismic instruments recorded that the reverberations lasted for 3 hours and 20 minutes and travelled to a depth of 25 miles, leading to the conclusion that the moon has an unusually light or even no core.
That's dude.
All right. Now they've done this again when they impacted the southern crater with 2-ton object intentionally at full velocity, and that was something else. So, so unusual metals is item 11 on the list. The moon's crust is much harder than presumed. Remember the extreme difficulty the astronauts encountered when they tried to drill into the Maria. Surprise! The Maria is composed primarily of ilmenite, a mineral containing large amounts of titanium, the same metal used to fabricate the hulls of deep diving submarines and the skins of the SR-71 Blackbird, also the Joint Strike Fighter and the F-18s. Uranium-236 and Neptunium-237, elements not found in nature on Earth, were discovered in lunar rocks, as were rust-proof iron particles. Now, I think the last time we saw rust-proof iron, it had included chlorine.
Also a column in India. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. So, the moon's origin. Before the astronauts, moon rocks conclusively disproved the theory. The moon was believed to have originated when a chunk of Earth broke off eons ago. Who knows from where, or from whence that large thing came off? But another theory was that the moon was created from leftover space dust remaining after the Earth was created. That's what I spoke about. Analysis of the composition of moon rocks disproved this theory also. Another popular theory is that the moon was somehow captured by Earth's gravitational attraction. But no evidence exists to support this theory. Now, obviously, I'm also going to say that... I'll go on and read this one. The chances... So Isaac Asimov stated, it's too big to have been captured by Earth. The chances of such a capture having been affected and happening, and the moon then having taken up nearly a circular orbit around the Earth are too small to make such an eventuality credible. All right, so I'm going to say that just to comment on this one, that it's true. The keyhole of a trajectory that the moon would have had to have come at us in, and then to be captured by the Earth without being flicked away into space. As we all know, the theory of Nibiru being such a large apogee and perigee. So the orbit to have been captured and been perfectly circular is almost impossible. In fact, it would have to have been traveling about the same speed as the Earth goes around the Sun, or just a little bit quicker, and hit the keyhole at the same time. It's easier getting 3 lotto wins in a row, right? I'm telling you, it's almost impossible. Weird orbit. Our moon is the only moon in the solar system that has a stationary, near-perfect circular orbit. Stranger still, the moon's center of mass is about 6,000 feet closer to the Earth than its geometric center. Wow, I didn't know that. Which should cause wobbling, but there's no bulge. But the moon's bulge is on the far side of the moon, away from the Earth. Something had to put the moon in orbit with its precise altitude, course, and speed. Now, we talked about that. I know that when Clementine went around, the shape of the moon was completely obvious. And when the astronauts had commented on that, although I don't have any script from them talking about it back to Houston. But that was also commented on. Okay, now the moon's diameter. How does one explain the coincidence that the moon is just the right distance coupled with just the right diameter to completely cover the sun during an eclipse? Again, Isaac Asimov responds, there is no astronomical reason why the moon and the sun should fit so well. It is the sheerest of coincidences, and only Earth among all the planets is blessed in this fashion. You know, if you believe that Ra, the sun god, had anything to do with it, then it's all completely possible that it was manufactured.
Absolutely.
Can you take us to strangeness, Max?
I'll take you to the strangeness.
Excellent.
Now, okay, Dave, you're absolutely correct. Now, this is really strange, and just after this item, we're going into the tinfoil head zone, but I'll warn you. The moon's crust seems to be much harder. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. The moon's crust seems to be much harder than originally presumed. When NASA was recorded drilling down a few inches into the moon's surface, it appeared that metal shavings were visible. Let that sink in.
Wow.
Earth's moon is the only natural satellite in the solar system that has a stationary, near-perfect circular orbit. We mentioned this, right? Now, and this is what is odd, and this has come from various sites, and I've just collated it here. Apparently, professional astronomers have been gradually discouraged from investigating a phenomenon that has been reported on the moon for 1,000 years. And this is the phenomenon. It is short-lived light, color, and other changes in the appearance of the lunar surface referred to as transient lunar phenomena. Now, human beings, and scientists in particular, like to classify and categorize things. They like to name things. Because if you've named something, you've dealt with it, right? You have. Oh, big. You know? And these things can't be explained. Light, color, other changes in the appearance of the lunar surface, which are very visible in Celestial, the documentary by Jose Escamilla, are referred to as transient lunar phenomena. Boom, put it in the box, dealt with, thank you very much. Oh, what about this? Oh, yeah, that's just a transient lunar phenomenon. Oh, same in medicine. Digress a little, you know, when people get better, despite anything else, oh, yeah, that's just a placebo effect. Let's buy more placebo effect. Okay, let's get all of it.
Where do I get my box of placebos?
Exactly, right? Oh, no. They just got better by themselves. Oh, you don't think that's worth investigating? No, it's a placebo effect. Thank you. It's in the box. Boom, done. Thank you very much. Now, on that, thank you, W8, or Wait. You mentioned something in the chat. Again, we're trying to be interactive here, guys. Human behavior and how it may be affected by the moon. Well, think about this, right? Lunatics. The word
lunatic.
Yes. Is someone that's acting peculiarly in a moon-like fashion, or under the influence of the moon, you know, in a crazy fashion, if you will. I know that my mother, and God bless her heart, seems to get a lot of energy during a full moon. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's true that there's more craziness happening during a full moon or a super full moon, but it certainly bears thinking about it, because, I mean, the moon does have physical effects on the Earth. We spoke about the tides, we spoke about women's cycles, and since we are made 75% up of water, maybe we have tides within our bodies as well. I mean, I'm just putting this out there, guys.
I've got one for you.
Go on.
That the reason why we would opt to go hunting during the full moon, and our connection to the hunting component of that means that we'd want to be putting the energy out there. Maybe that helpless energy that we're not using is causing the lunacy.
Yes.
Right? It's this abundant energy, we need to do something. I don't know what to do. Let's just go tip over cars. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's push auto bins into, dumpsters into the street. I don't know what it is, but whatever it does, I know that there's been many studies talked about by hospitals who have all said that we have a bunch of crazies in here, all with very similar stupid injuries to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a full moon? Yes, it is. So the type of injury was also found, not just the quantity of them. There's a constant background of level of injuries that people would sustain throughout any given period of time. But when there's a full moon, the idiocy is increased.
I go you one better.
Uh-oh.
Now here. Okay, now we're now officially firmly planted in the tinfoil hats, guys.
Please put the hats on right now.
Put them sunny side out. Okay, strap in your safety devices. Okay, you're strapped in and suspend your own individual reality generators. Lycanthropes, or werewolves, I should say here. When do they change into a werewolf? Full moon.
Full moon.
Okay, so again, it seems to be maybe that people. I'm not saying they're no werewolves. I'm not saying they're werewolves either. What I'm saying, though, is that maybe people observed strange behavior from antiquity, because lycanthropes go back into Greek times, ancient classical Greek times, and further beyond that. Skinwalkers, shapeshifters, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
The moon was related to it. Do you know what I mean? It's a how can I put this? It's an observation that must have been made. People acted strangely, maybe even violently, or brutally, when the moon was out, leading to the rise of maybe these werewolf legends, potentially.
Well, the creation of language is based on something.
Totally, absolutely. I mean, something. It has to be something there to make it as long as it has in human culture. Now, since we are in the tinfoil head zone, we are going to talk about something we've mentioned before, and this is Spaceship Moon. Now, we've discussed in detail that scientists can't explain the low density of the moon. They think it's hollow. They don't know how it got here. It's very strange how it rings like a bell. All of those things. Now, what if all of the above that we've mentioned leads us to the conclusion that it's a gigantic extraterrestrial craft? Maybe, extraterrestrial in the sense that it's outside the Earth's atmosphere.
That's no moon, it's a space station.
Maybe. And it was brought here eons ago by intelligent beings. Okay? And you know what? This is the only theory that is supported by all of the data. And there is no data available that contradicts this theory. Let that sink in for a second. In July of 1970, members of the then Soviet, now it's the Russian, Academy of Sciences, Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov, proposed the spaceship moon theory. So it came from Soviet scientists. This is taken from the text. This pseudoscientific, and I don't know why it can't be scientific, theory claims that the Earth's moon may actually be an alien spacecraft. It's a hollowed-out planetoid created by unknown beings with technology far superior to any on Earth. Understandable, but I mean, it may have been an ancient Earth culture who did it. I don't want to preempt. Huge machines would have been used to melt the rock and form large cavities. The moon would therefore consist of a hull-like inner shell and an outer shell made from metallic rocky slag. Remember the shavings of metal that they may have.
That's right.
The spaceship moon was then placed into orbit around the Earth, and it still is there to this day. Proponents of this theory point to the increased reports and pictures of UFOs taken by NASA on their missions to the moon. And do remember, last week we spoke about the ducks in a row that were flying across the surface of the moon. Dave, do you remember? And
I do.
And there's a picture on the website that we had up last week that you should go to have a look at. It has been found that asteroids and meteors not only create shallow craters on the moon surface, but produce a convex, like we discussed, floor to the crater instead of concave, as you would expect if there were an impact, supporting the idea of a rigid shell. Okay,
absolutely.
Now think about that, guys. As strange as it is, the spaceship moon theory is the only one that is supported by all of the facts. Okay, you can call me crazy, you can call Dave
crazy.
But it's not, because it fits with all, and this is really where you have to go as a scientist or as a rational human being. Take the evidence and you go where it leads you. There's an even stranger thing, and this is something I wasn't aware of. I don't know if you're aware of this, Dave. The pre-moon people, right? As we did the research into this, I wasn't aware that there are actually tribes and races of people that claim to have existed on the Earth before the arrival of the moon. I don't know if that's boasting or some people just claiming great antiquity. The Greek authors Aristotle and Plutarch and the Roman authors Apollonius, Rhodius, and Ovid, they all wrote of a group of people called the Proselenes. Now, Selena in Greek is moon, in Latin it's luna, and Proselene means prior to the moon. And they were meant to have lived in a central mountainous area of Greece called Arcadia. Aristotle wrote that Arcadia in Greece, before being inhabited by the Hellenes, which are the Greeks, had a population of Pelasgians, and that these aborigines occupied the land already before there was a moon in the sky above the earth. For this reason, they were called Proselenes. The Proselenes claimed title to this area because their forebears were there before there was a moon in the heavens. Now, I don't know if it's hyperbole or if it's just some guys showing off. We have to consider it, though. The period when the Earth was moonless is probably the most remote recollection of mankind. Democritus and Democritus and Anaxagoras taught that there was a time when the Earth was without a moon. Now, these are all ancient scholars, philosophers, and writers. Apollonius of Rhodes mentioned the time when not all the orbs were yet in the heavens, before Danae and Deucalion. Deucalion is the Greek Noah. He survived the flood before these races came into existence. And only the Arcadians lived, of whom it is said that they dwelt on mountains and fed on acorns before there was a moon. So indicating maybe some very primitive people, potentially. Plutarch wrote in the Roman Questions, there were Arcadians of Evander following, the so-called pre-lunar people. Similar wrote Ovid, the Arcadians are said to have possessed their lands before the birth of Jove, and the folk is older than the moon. Now, Jove is actually Jupiter. Hippolytus refers to a legend that Arcadia brought forth Pelasgus, of greater antiquity than the moon. Lucian, in his astrology, says that the Arcadians affirm in their folly that they are older than the moon. Censorinus also alludes to the time in the past when there was no moon in the sky. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in ancient times about this. Some allusions to the time before there was a moon may also be found in the scriptures. That's the Bible, and I don't want to step on anyone's feet here, but in Job 25:5, it says this: the grandeur of the Lord who maketh peace in the heights is praised, and the time is mentioned before there was a moon and it did not shine. In Psalm 72:5 it is said, thou hast feared since the time of the sun and before the time of the moon, a generation of generations. A generation of generations means a very long time. Of course, it is not use to count, but it certainly is interesting that it should be there. The memory of world without a moon also lives in oral traditions among some South American Indians. The Indians of the Bogota Highlands in the eastern Cordilleras of Colombia relate some of the tribal reminiscences to the time before there was a moon. In the earliest times when the moon was not yet in the heavens, say the tribesmen of Chibchas. Now, there's an unsubstantiated claim that the courtyard of Calasaya, Tiahuanaco, the Great Gate, also seems to record that the moon came into orbit around 13,000 years ago. Now, I don't know if that's just well out there. I'm just mentioning it because I found online. But Dave has got a very interesting story about the Aboriginal moon.
Absolutely. So the native Australians, the Aboriginals that lived up in the Northern Territory, the top of Australia, I'm going to read this to you. It says, many years ago, people realized that the light was needed at night time because they found it difficult to walk around or to hunt. The sun lit up their daytime. Something was needed to light up the night. They held a big meeting, and one idea was to collect a huge pile of firewood during the daytime hours and set fire to it, just as the sun set, so people would have light at night time. But most people thought that this was impractical. They didn't want to go and collect all the wood every single day for hunting at night time. One member of the tribe had a great idea, though. Why not make a special boomerang that would shine? Throw it high into the sky, and at night, this boomerang would give... Remember, shine is the word here. The boomerang would give enough light to allow people and animals to see at night. They made a giant boomerang. People tried to throw it in the sky. They tried, they couldn't. And then a very old, thin, weak man stepped up who had very thin arms. And one of the elders was kind one of the elders was a kind and wise man, and he said the old man should be allowed to throw the boomerang. And throw the boomerang the old man did, and it went higher and farther than anyone else. It stayed up in the sky, shining down onto the people. Now, the word shine, they didn't have anything reflective except for water. Right? So this is their term. They describe the moon as shining as well. And so the shape of the boomerang can still be seen today in the moon every month. That's when it's the slight curve. It's the new moon. So they talk about a day when there wasn't a moon, and this fits into the same story.
Absolutely. Now, if I can just say this, the Aboriginal legends, or it has been shown that Aborigines have been in Australia for at least 40,000 years, potentially longer. Would you agree, Dave?
Absolutely. 40k has been the estimated minimum age.
Which makes it the single longest continuous culture on this planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And
their stories are handed down in what's called the Dreamtime, and the Dreamtime are stories which describe the origin of almost everything there is.
Yes, correct. Now, bear in mind that today we look with some not dismay but dismissal at these primitive people that pass these traditions orally. Now, I would like to remind you that until recently we did the same thing in the West. We passed on massive tomes of knowledge and entire epics, certainly in Northern Europe and in other places as well, entirely orally. There was no written word. In fact, the feats of these guys were astonishing. They had fantastic memories and they remembered perfectly something that would be several books worth today, and recited it and taught it to their student as they went along. So I don't want to disparage this at all. I want to applaud the Aborigines for having an oral tradition that is probably going back thousands of years. Well, anything that we know. Having said that, we have a few more strange things to talk about. And I can tell you that we probably won't be able to finish it all, Dave. What do you think?
I think what we'll do, we'll just go through it and leave off, maybe just do the 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
And then we can get on to the real, the meaty stuff for next week.
Yeah, I think you're that. Now we discussed the transient lunar phenomena, and in this particular instance, we can call also the age of flashes. Aristarchus, Plato, Eratosthenes, Biela, Rabbi Levi, and Posidonius all reported anomalous lights on the moon. NASA, 1 year before the first lunar landing, reported 570 lights and flashes observed on the moon from 1540 to 1967.
And just remember that this is exactly why they chose where they chose to go to the moon, because of the amount of sightings in that area, which we all know today as the Sea of Tranquility. And this book, we spoke about this last week. They put a book of these sightings in there called what are they called? The transient lights.
Sorry, the lunar transient phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and this is, again, we don't know what these phenomena are. We don't know what those lights are. We have no idea. Lights and flashes, Dave. Come on, we just dismiss it, and officially, but NASA, like you said, sent their to a specific place on the moon to I think to investigate. In fact, the Operation Moonblink, NASA's Operation Moonblink, detected 28 lunar events in a relatively short period of time. And on July 29, 1953, John J. O'Neill observed a 12-mile long bridge straddling the crater Mare Crisium. In August, British astronomer Dr. H.P. Wilkins verified that very This is what he said. It looks artificial, almost incredible that such a thing could have been formed in the first instance, or, if it was formed, could have lasted during the ages in which the moon has been in existence. Okay.
12-mile long bridge.
Now, I don't know if we have built anything that long, to be honest, on Earth, but
I don't think we have.
And for this to be a naturally occurring phenomenon, or
On a crater. Yeah. On a crater.
Would that happen again?
And how can you put it there after the crater was formed?
Exactly, right? In fact, nothing in a crater formation would shout out to me, that'll form a bridge. That makes sense.
Yeah, click. It's 12 miles long.
Yeah. Oh, 12 miles. 12 miles. That's almost 20. Actually. And there's also a shard. Now, if you're familiar with Mike Hoagland's work and Enterprise mission, he's a gentleman who has documented quite a lot of the lunar phenomena. I'm sure you all have seen his videos and talks. And there are these strange shapes and buildings and forts and towers on the moon. The shard, now we put this in here for a reason, you will hear in a second. The shard, an obelisk-shaped object that towers 1.5 miles from the Oort area of the moon's surface, was discovered by Orbiter 3 in 1968. Dr. Bruce Cornett, who studied the amazing photograph, stated this: "No known natural process can explain such a structure."
A structure, not object, structure.
This was before clamped down and didn't. Okay, I don't anything today that's 1.5 miles tall. Dave, can we?
No, we haven't built anything. I don't think that's 1 mile tall.
It reminds me of the monolith in Arthur C. Clarke's Space Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's something else we're going to come to. There's also a tower. One of the most curious features ever photographed on the lunar surface by the Lunar Orbiter. In fact, this is the Lunar Orbiter photograph 3-84M. It's an amazing spire that rises more than 5 miles from the Sinus Medii region of the surface. No idea how this the spire, the tower. Okay, not me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the obelisks.
I have seen those. I've seen pictures of all of these.
Why don't we talk about this in school? Why isn't there a documentary about this done by NASA? Lunar Orbiter 2 took several photographs in November of 1966. Now, bear in mind here, this is all the 50s and 60s. Okay, but since then there has been a massive clampdown on this information. And these pictures show several obelisks. One of which was more than 150 feet tall. The spires were arranged in precisely the same way as the apices of the 3 Great Pyramids.
Oh, that's Orion.
Got it. Absolutely. So this is, I think, where we'll leave it for today, because we're rapidly running out of time. But I think it is more obvious that something is amiss, something is not right, and you don't have to go into the tinfoil head zone to discuss this, really, right?
Oh, guys, you wait until next week. Am I going to give you some meaty detail? I swear. I'm so looking forward to this, and I think we'll expand on this and get a whole nother show out of it.
Can I just suggest some reading, guys? If you have spare time on your hands, get yourself a book called Who Built the Moon by Christopher Knight and Ellen Butler. All right, it's an excellent resource, and we will discuss this in some detail as well.
And for your homework today, I'm going to paste into the chat room there. I'm not going to read the link out; it's too complicated. But it's a PDF of the actual Apollo 11 mission notes, so the mission guide of what they wanted to do. Nice work there, Mekki. Hey guys, I hope we're educational. We have fun doing the show. I hope we're teaching you something at the same time. We're learning something, clearly. And I think we both love doing this show, and we'll see you next week in a continuation. This is the first trilogy that we've done. And we'll see you next week for another Shiny Side Out with
Dave
and Mekki.